This video is brought to you by Blessed Be God Boutique, maker of Catholic fashionable apparel, handmade accessories, and more. From time to time, I think it is good to look at what some of the saints and mystics in the history of the Church have said about the man of sin, about the Antichrist. Now, every single one of the figures I'm bringing to you are either canonized saints or blesseds, and they are on their way. Those who are blesseds are on their way to canonization. You can take these prophecies as having been approved for a false prophet, a little false prophet, not the false prophet, but a false prophet nonetheless would not be numbered among the saints by definition. So let's go over these now, because there's a great deal of interest in this, given the state of the world and the bizarre decrees coming out of Rome these days. Some have hypothesized that Francis is himself the false prophet. Not a view that I endorse. I do not endorse that view, not because I think there may be anything wrong with the logic. I certainly understand why people come to it. But the Church warns us to be careful trying to identify who the man of sin is, and by extension, those who support his work, because we could be fooled and swept up in the tides of the man of sin when he does arrive. Hence why I always caution people not to try to speculate on the identity of the Antichrist himself or even the false prophet. But if you feel so inclined to do so, that is your business. I choose not to. The Prophecies of St. Bridget of Sweden. The time of Antichrist will be near, when the measure of injustice will overflow, and when wickedness has grown to immense proportions, when Christians love heresies, and the unjust trample underfoot the servants of God. At the end of this age, the Antichrist will be born. As Christ was born from the highest type of woman, a virgin, so Antichrist will be born from the lowest, a woman of the night. He will be a child wonder at birth. His mother will be an accursed woman, who will pretend to be well informed about spiritual things, and his father an accursed man, from the seed of whom the devil shall form his work. The time of this Antichrist, well known to me, will come when iniquity and impiety shall above measure abound, when injustice shall have filled the measure to overflowing, and wickedness shall have grown to immeasurable proportions. It is not in the time described by the brother whose books thou hast seen. Before, however, Antichrist arrives, the gate of faith will be opened to some nations, and Scripture shall be verified. People without intelligence will glorify me, and deserts shall be inhabited. Hence, when many Christians will be lovers of heresies, and wicked men will persecute the clergy, and trample spirituality and justice underfoot, this should be the sign that Antichrist shall come without delay. Lastly, he shall arrive, the most wicked of men, and helped by our so-called elder brothers, he will fight against the whole world. He will reign during 3 years, and shall have dominion over the whole earth. He will make every effort to abolish from the earth the Christian name, and very many Christians will be ended. As an aside, this is the one part she gets wrong, and I suspect it's because of the attempts at the consecration of Fatima, and I will mention that at the end. In the year 1980, the wicked shall prevail. They will profane and sacrilegiously defile the churches, by building in them altars to idols and to Antichrist, whom they will worship, and will attempt to force others to do the same. Rome will be visited by sword and fire and plowed under. And now follows relatively minor prophecies from lesser-known saints and mystics from around the same period, 12th and 13th century. They do provide some interesting details here about the state of the world when the man of sin arrives. And if you look at the state of the world as they saw it, we still have a ways to go, it looks like, before that man shows up. But again, I could be wrong. You are free to interpret these as you like. Another saint from around the same period, Saint Hildegard of Bingen, said the following: The time is coming when princes and peoples will reject the authority of the Pope. Some countries will prefer their own church rulers to the Pope. The German Empire will be divided. Before the comet comes, many nations, the good excepted, will be scourged by want and lack of food. The great nation in the ocean, that is inhabited by people of different tribes and descent, will be devastated by earthquake, storm, and tidal wave. It will be divided, and in great part submerged. That nation will also have many misfortunes at sea and lose its colonies. After the great comet, the great nation will be devastated by earthquakes, storms, and great waves of water, causing much want. The ocean will also flood many other countries, so that all coastal cities will live in fear, with many gone. All sea-coast cities will be fearful, and many of them will be destroyed, and most living creatures will be ended, and even those who escape will perish from a horrible affliction, for in none of those cities does a person live according to the laws of God. A powerful wind will rise in the north, carrying heavy fog and the densest dust, and will fill their throats and eyes so that they will cease their violence and be stricken with a great fear. Then the prophecy of Johannes Fried. When the great time will come in which mankind will face its last hard trial, it will be foreshadowed by striking changes in nature. The alteration between cold and heat will become more intensive. Storms will have more catastrophic effects. Earthquakes will destroy great regions, and the seas will overflow many lowlands. Not all of it will be the result of natural causes, but mankind will penetrate into the bowels of the earth, and will reach into the clouds, gambling with its own existence. Before the powers of destruction will succeed in their design, the universe will be thrown into disorder, and the age of iron will plunge into nothingness. When nights will be filled with more intensive cold and days with heat, a new life will begin in nature. The heat means radiation from the earth, the cold waning light of the sun. Only a few years more and you will become aware that sunlight has grown perceptibly weaker. When even your artificial light will cease to give service, the great event in the heavens will be near. That was a short look at the time of the Antichrist, and what the man of sin will be himself, from the archives of the various writings of saints. And I'm so curious what you think about all of that. I did mention that I would say something about why I think St. Bridget of Sweden mentioned the year 1980. I tend to think that the Third Secret of Fatima and the consecrations that were attempted from the 1940s onwards, virtually every pope since the 1940s, has done their own consecration that did not fulfill Our Lady's requests at Fatima because she simply wanted a single specific country and no one else consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. Hasn't been done yet. It's always somebody else being added to that consecration every single time. But every one of those consecrations, I do personally believe, had an effect. When a pope does consecrate the world to the Immaculate Heart, or a collection of countries or whatnot, there will be an effect. The power of binding and loosing cannot be understated. And I do believe those consecrations bought the world time. You are free to disagree with me on that if you like. There could have been some event in 1980 that happened we are just simply not aware of. I've seen some hypotheses from Sedevacantist groups and others that that it wasn't the year 1980 as much as it was 1,980 years from various biblical events that happened that would have placed it at, coming in the near future or having come already in the past. Personally, I tend to think that the consecrations that were attempted by the various pontiffs from the council onwards, and even before then, Pius XII in the 1940s, bought the world some time. That's what I tend to think. But I'm curious what you have to say about all this. So let me know your thoughts on all these in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.